everyone likes the podcast, like listen. The other one, this some kind of a what scenario. Brandon, go ahead and tell us what it's going to be this weekend.
Basically, all abilities, and know that he's what would have been the outcome of that based on what we know about Kiss throughout all those years. How would that have changed?
Very interesting. That's going to be a good one to dive into. So before we get into that, of course, current events. Not a whole lot going on, other than it looks like the information for the Kiss cruise was announced. It doesn't look like it's the complete finalized details, but the most of it, and it looks like they're going with the Kiss World theme for the tour. Kiss World at Sea is what it's called. All that's going to be the theme. The last years for the show, World, I'm guessing is these. So I'm not with that. Costumes are now. Pull out a lot of some of the deep cuts like they, but that looks like no theme to this year's show. And other band thing looks like Steel Panther again, which I really care for them. Big Rock Show, I'm real familiar with. I think they're like a cover band, if I ain't mistaken. And then look, they have Let Again and Hard Day's Night, two tribute bands, of course. Magnetico and then Dives in his band. Also Jason, which I that person is in more now. The way I did fit through the taking all Cosmo and then so how do you kind of bottom the either?
Well, it's other than those bands, all of them made bands. They didn't announce maybe a skill someone here.
I could have been some fun for the with that big real, but I'm assuming they probably have classic rock and that, so that I could kind of as far as itself, gonna kind of be soon.
Oh. They would have something from similar thing. They wear costumes there were that sort of it was. It might have they were boom or sonic booms. Just wearing those. Anything.
So what the perfect theme dress to that, and of course I've and originally it is the album. Obviously they only did like I don't know what songs on the album. Not like the same not, which, you know, I kind of just myself on the crew. I was hoping for this, or I played the songs one night, you know, for the album the next year. And the thing that there's just going to be costumes that pour for cut, pull some out instead of kind of the, you know, it's like, well, here is time, it's like, you know, you're not the same songs played.
I will say, surprised with the video footage from the album. It's probably, although Gene did rock and roll, that was good.
Did it active too?
Yeah, that's right. And that one's win.
Price and Dino.
Right.
I mean, they on acoustic here and there, you know, full electric, and so I'd love to see them like Fitz stuff played for you.
You know, it seem to, for the most, they ignore it. And you know, between should just less ever.
And they'll kind of do out here, or maybe that's the only two now, and much more. And, you know, if like, you know, the song, you know, plenty of them.
I'd like to hear that song, or really cool.
That one, you know, I'm all private, but even if it can keep me from Truck City, I mean, perform that been cool here, but I know wouldn't be able to. But it's like that wouldn't. Who knew?
Sort of on off the subject, when you said we won't be able to, you know, some songs work still get it.
Yeah.
When obviously, like you, I'm curious. Does he sing like random songs because they have like, and doesn't
from what he's talking now. I mean, he's gotten. He's off.
does I love you. I've watched this on Finish, so like, you know, where he's first he's used to song, and I mean, it's going to be best, like, terrible.
Torn is, to me, exact live song.
That's not
Video over vocal and all that. I know they did ball back, you know, when they would, yeah, like now, it's much. I don't think there's plenty of the other Dukerism. So, with them
they do.
would.
See, that's the thing. You know, things all they've not off limits. Basically, it's like a lot of, but we'll have
You're right. And,
Is it because, or is it?
yeah, I think that casual fans about shock me. I
Oh,
if that in, I really was not even seeing that and see that out. And I think this is a new song to me. There's not.
that's the thing. Beth is probably the only place other than Paul and Gene that know. And you can't list stuff that can tell me more about the song.
That's the thing that's kind of surprising too. Is those two albums we've done by they are held off their tour, and I think now this
Yeah.
um, the,
It's that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, of course, modern day I rap being a song either because they intro. I'm probably yeah, and,
Which is weird.
but other than the only albums.
Of Paul wants the other part when they start from the action from their people, then they
I, I don't know. It's still just lines play the hands the way to get this in. So about with the show mentioned that this time story show again like means gonna sit and learn more about the history for the shows as far as the influence.
that would be good.
Yeah. It's gonna see some once it's I know like five from Bruce, but
Pretty out there.
G doing his thing. That's another thing too. Friday 9th, and he's Anderson. Really thinking about the decision, and guys are already going. So, trying to get along. I know, right? Or something. I was just looking a few days ago and 20 songs and he's definitely doing us work a lot of the staple he does. Got sale.
You're need to hear only here because because between it, like,
That all mean that his I mean, granted, too. They don't look. I definitely hear it a lot. Check. So I think they're on the Kiss thing. Else I didn't mention.
Oh, I think I'd heard.
We could talk about the other day. Over again that got a hold of, the order where how, but I think enough to 3 songs uploaded and listen. It was definitely cool. So what kind of first tracks?
The Your Dreams was one that just was so different. I mean, in the same different part. Was that the one that was instrument?
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Yeah. And, being someone here.
Yeah, that one.
Very
really,
never, but that a while, doing so
right.
It's like
Now it's kind of it's like all doing with ended up doing it. So we never was a song new and he ended up and listen to all little or and playing and how new this probably was the idea.
I bet they did songs like a lot before they, or maybe it was whoever did his factor.
Right, it's like talked about this stuff, and these and who knows like that. I'm fair track other than the drums different sound you'll kind of figure out do a little times definitely different. I run all tracks and it's some of my favorite. All the other is that and now some of my favorite. Any of them.
We were saying the other night, was my talk Pepper's and how version of the White Album or not.
Oh, cool.
Project down the album and Gosh is the one that first the White Album going to be a lot, but because that it was an example, Sexy has 40 to sift through. I don't want to beat it.
I was going to double while already. It's going to like so
we're getting really to that point.
In stuff I think I said this last week. Well, like when it comes to the deal in the alternate, because kind of like thing here, the slave. I love those two.
I love the necessarily that many takes, but numerous takes. After this,
I love them. Extra discs on it. I'm sure they could have moved that. And again, we all do this too. Maybe make that in depth time. Like I said, take a we've done their whole career. I know those right. I was a little hesitant to be Beatles because I'll just be from me just did them. I'm gonna buy.
Guys sent the F one.
Yeah, that shop had that regular 3. I was looking. Folks.
I'd really have the deluxe one vinyl to deluxe one, I guess, sure, particular, as a
Fairly with it too. Kinds of pictures and I done like visually all the stuff that's on with it.
it was like 100 or something of out or whatever.
Right. Blu-ray, I get like the 5.1 mix of them. Which I'm pretty the PBS from whenever that was. But yeah, I mean, try to add digital on iTunes. But
What have you been able to get a Sarge documentary that's on the thing really?
No, I haven't noticed.
It's to be on again. It's 8 o'clock, and that's the going, I think.
Okay. I'm gonna that maybe it'll come to or something.
Get home Wednesday, go on, try to watch it since because I said Saturday. It's like I even have my phone.
It's documentary comes with this.
Well, close to the 5th anniversary, something to that I know. It's an hour and a half long.
Definitely want it out.
So, P.com, all their stages, and you put zip something, and it all the stages showing in one time.
Oh, yeah. If I miss it, it'll pop YouTuber. But to keep an eye on the version of the Deluxe. So I haven't picked up iTunes yet, but I'm probably on here at this point. I don't think there's any discuss. I haven't really picked a new Kiss films. Have you?
No, I have.
They only picked up that Loud book, Making of Destroyer, and the history of that. I ran across that at books the other. Snatched that right up. I mean, who knows when they're around the read.
Still have travel Kiss travel mug.
Yeah, they had that next to it, and I don't know when I'll ever get around to reading. So, I mean, I've already, the book got a Paul book and a couple other ones that I had before that, and I'm almost done. I'm getting close to the end of Peter, so it gets harder down. At this point, where he was talking about the Kiss convention back in 90 or 94 or whatever that was, all that, so it's kind of leading to getting close to the plug thing and all that stuff. So once it gets stuff, it's split down. But so far, I do love that book. It took me forever to get around it, but
You got the cat man there behind you. Let's see if you have cat ears from time to time.
Yeah, she's on. See, I don't know what she's.
It's the cat woman, not the cat man.
Yeah. The other in the wind. I turned.
Mine's right there.
He's sleeping. Where's the other one?
Very odd for him to do that.
Where's the other one at?
That's the thing. It's usually the other one.
Well, the fact that this one's in here there'll probably be some point in this show that the other one will come running in. You'll probably see him jump up there, and
Yeah.
they'll probably knock everything off my shelf there.
Yeah. That same problem.
Because he likes to torture. Oh, I see him. He's in there. He's perched on the thing next to the fish tank and staring at the fish tank. So we have a frog in there. He tries to get the frog. He just stares in at the tank and sits there and bats at it. Jesus. Well, I guess let's jump into this topic then. It's this is going to be interesting. About let's just kind of put this in a time frame, I guess. Like what part in the career would you say that this has taken place?
Well, let's see. Say, I'm trying to think when that they did the most extensive touring, but I mean, Kiss is known for their extensive touring, really. So I can't think of anything. I know they had that 2-year break. There was a 2-year break before Dynasty came out. I mean, I know they were releasing other stuff, but as far as touring, so probably after maybe Love Gun or maybe even after Dynasty, I'm not sure.
That's kind of the same thing I was thinking, because I was almost thinking, like, you know, with the stress of doing the solo albums.
That's that's like when Peter left was like in 1980. So
I'm kind of thinking, like, you know, the stress of doing the solo albums, and maybe he would have overexerted his voice then, and kind of maybe blew it out at that point. And then by the time Dynasty happened, it was like, he was able to squeeze that one out. But then after that, maybe that's when it would have fallen apart. Maybe even before that.
Well, yeah, because in all this hypothetical stuff, you can speculate in your brain. At least my brain goes like 20 different directions. Well, what if he did this? What if he didn't do that? And what if he went this far and to this album, or if it stopped, so it's like, I don't know.
I know, because we talk about it almost like it actually happened or something.
Right.
But it's that type of scenario. Like, well, in my world, I would think that this happened this way.
Well, you can sort of put it into like the real perspective, just base it back in the late 70s. Like say with Sonic Boom, okay, they had that album come out. They did the tour. The album, you can hear his vocals on the album, or at least I can. They sound very, sort of at times, very gargled.
Yes.
Like his, there's like I don't know how to describe it, like he's gargling something. But in the studio, it's very subtle. You can't, tell if you're not like super into Kiss. But then the tour, because I've seen him on that tour, and it's just like, oh my God, it's just his voice is cracking, and I hated it. I really hated it.
Yeah.
And all the footage I've seen and all the audio that I've heard, it's just it's like when you like a band so much and you see it happen like that, it's just like there's nothing you can do, of course, but it's like I almost wish it would have stopped.
Right.
Before it got to that point, so. Take sort of that kind of mindset and put it back in, say, like with Love Gun or Dynasty, somewhere around in there, and then think about all the stuff that happened after that in real history, and then think about, okay, well, Paul was the one, by reading his book and everything else, that kept the band alive when all this other stuff was going on, when Peter left, when Ace left, when they got new members, and when Gene went out to Hollywood, and blah, blah, blah. So he was the one. So if he was gone, whether he was overseeing the band or not, if he was out of the band, maybe he wouldn't have been overseeing the band. I mean, it just depends, being hypothetical. I don't really know. I think that, for example, when Peter left, Peter did not find his replacement.
No.
But if Paul left, it seems like, based on all this Kiss 2.0 stuff that we talk about, it's almost like Paul would have tried to find his own replacement, even back then, I think.
Right. I kind of think that as well. Because I don't think he would have wanted the band to end, especially that early. So I feel like he would have still pretty much been the one running the band, but not obviously not actively in the band. Like maybe he would still, help with the songwriting and all that kind of stuff. But
And I just wonder if it would have been based on that, if it would have been easier for him, because with the stuff that they were dealing with Peter and Ace, from say 77 or 79, right around in there, since he hypothetically wouldn't be in the band, would it be easier for him to deal with all that because he's not like right in the middle of it, so to speak?
possibly. And I agree with what you were saying as far as like the Sonic Boom stuff. Like it was so hard to listen to, and it's getting hard to listen to it again. But at the same time, it's like I appreciate his love for doing it and the showmanship, but there's just that line that needs to be drawn at some point, And
Well, go ahead.
and with the Sonic Boom album, like say in Modern Day Delilah, that little scream he does towards the end, that little break, it's like I was surprised he pulled that off. But at the same time, when it comes to doing the studio stuff versus live, you can cheat a little bit on vocals. Like you can bury that microphone in your face and you can just barely and it sounds like you're screaming this loud, growl or whatever. So I'm thinking that's probably how that turned out, to where he's able to sound, pretty good on those albums. But then live, obviously you got to push harder and you can't cheat like that. So
Well, I just wonder if it ended around 77, would there have been a solo album with solo albums? But if it ended in 79, which that was sort of at the peak of their popularity, 77 sort of was, but 79 was like the most elaborate thing they've ever done. Even though I guess at that point some of the places weren't completely selling out. Is that true? Seems like I'd heard that.
Yeah, and 79 was kind of when they, I don't know, some people would say they went Disney as far as the stage, the show, the costumes, and appealing more to the kids and families and all that stuff. And so it seemed like things were starting to crumble at that point.
I think a lot of that, not only did Kiss agree to do that and with the look and everything, and the Dynasty album, which is not really that disco if you listen to the whole album.
No, it's not.
But a lot of that was Bill Aucoin was behind all that, and it was his ideas too. And was Sean Delaney still around at that point?
I think by that point he was gone. Or no? I could be mistaken. It may not have been until like 80, 82, 83 when they ended up getting rid of them. Because that whole thing with Glittering Marks and all that.
So if Paul wasn't in the band anymore, whether he had input or not, if he cared at all, because I think he would have, because even if he was, well, here's a perfect example, and this might be the way it was, because there's a real life scenario, when Brian Johnson had to quit AC/DC.
Right.
He didn't have a choice. He's not really affiliated with them anymore. He's doing a radio show. He's doing different stuff, and now the circumstances might have been different. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but we've heard that the doctor said he had to quit. He's going to do death and all that. So if you apply that scenario to, say, Paul Stanley's voice and set in the late 70s, maybe he wouldn't be affiliated because he wouldn't. There's no point.
I definitely see that. Brian Johnson did get back on stage recently, though. So
did he really?
He is kind of sort of making a comeback, and
is he doing his own thing, or is he?
I can't remember who it was, but he got on stage with a couple other musicians, and it was just sort of like a jam type thing. Did a couple cover songs and something like that. But it was only, I don't know, I think a couple weeks ago maybe I heard about that.
Because I'd read recently that, and I don't know if there was someone specifically saying it, or if they'd got information from AC/DC, or if it was Angus Young or whatever. But it basically, Angus had said he's going to continue AC/DC with all different members. So it's almost like, they've wrote Brian off seemingly, and then everyone else is gone pretty much.
Right.
So
they brought back that what's his name, Chris Slade, that drummer.
Yeah.
Well, then now when Cliff, what's his name, Cliff,
Cliff Williams.
was it Williams?
Is it Williams? Cliff
The
Williams?
bass player. When he retired, though, that kind of
Yeah.
really almost put a nail in the band there.
Well, I think that he was, and I don't know this because I haven't heard it, but I think he was just basically fed up with all the stuff that was going on. And he probably was convinced, at least from my point of view, if I was in his situation, I'd think this ain't AC/DC anymore. It's not a band anymore. It's just like we need to quit.
Yeah, it's almost like bringing in Axel was just more of a gimmick and to try to make more money and drawing people in with that instead of what was really best for the band. And
Yeah.
he probably didn't agree with letting Brian go and who knows what else. But again, you start getting to that age, you probably just kind of start getting tired of the whole thing, and there comes a point that you just decide you don't want to do it anymore, and you want to start spending the time with your family and kids, and even grandkids. If he might have grandkids at this point, for all I know. But
That's the thing. If Paul Stanley had to quit Kiss, would he have been replaced, or would have Kiss just automatically stopped?
Well, see, if it happened at that point, like in the 70s, just me, my gut feeling thinks that it wouldn't have stopped, because I think Paul would have wanted the band to keep going because they were at that pinnacle at the time. And I think, like I was saying earlier, he would probably still have control of the band, basically still running the band, and maybe even, helping writing songs and all that stuff, or even he might have even started producing at that point, producing all their albums. And
the thing is, as far as like, you think about all the drama and stuff that was going on, it's almost like Ace and Peter probably wouldn't have cared at that point to stop.
Right.
But see, the thing is, if you put it in that time period, there had never been a new member in Kiss. They still hadn't taken the makeup off yet. They hadn't had to get new characters wearing the same makeup. They hadn't went through any of that. So I just wonder how hard it was initially for them to let Peter go, or decide to do that, and to get someone else and put them in makeup. I wonder how hard it was to do that, because that would have been the same type of situation if Paul or Gene, either one, would have had to been replaced.
I mean, I think Paul would have definitely handpicked his replacement. And who knows, if that had happened, maybe Peter and Ace would have stuck around, because I know from reading Peter's book, he felt like Gene and Paul would gang up a lot on each of them, and that was part of the thing that sort of drove them out. And so maybe if Paul was sort of out of the picture like that, as far as on the road and whatnot, maybe things would have been a little different again.
And I'm also curious as to, like when Eric Carr came on, he was basically just hired and put into a character.
Right.
So he didn't have a 100% say-so in what was going on, with the band and everything. So if you have a new guy in Paul's place, whether Paul's backing it or not, how does that guy have 100% say-so? It would almost be like an Eric Carr situation.
Well, I think that's all it'd be, is like he would be hired to play the shows and, all that stuff. But when it came down to it, Paul was the one still running the show. And he would just be like a hired act. And
so do you think Gene would have taken that role over?
Maybe on the road, but I think as far as the everyday business and the songwriting, studio stuff, I think Paul would have pretty much stayed, on top of all that, to this day. And, he kind of does that now. Well, he does do that now, being in the band still, with the producing and all that stuff. And
so do you think that, like, say, the next album after Dynasty, you think they would have done an Unmasked album? I mean, do you think the history with Paul behind the scenes, if we're saying it that way, would have continued to be the same? Or do you think that if you say that, like, Paul is completely disconnected and he's doing something else or
Uh,
having a family life or whatever. What do you think the band would have, with this new, Star Child character? Do you think the band would have had because I think Unmasked album had a lot to do with Paul.
mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of songs on there suit him. He wrote a lot of those. It's the type of music he wanted to do. And if it wasn't him in the band, you got this guy he's the character, but he's not Paul, so he's not thinking that way. I'm curious in 1980, would they have put that kind of album out?
Because when you listen to Unmasked, it's almost like Paul was trying to go more mainstream and have top 40 hits and whatnot. Because I've always said if any album is a disco album, it's Unmasked to me, not Dynasty. But that's still because at the same time it's more pop. But to me, there's stuff on there that sounds a little more disco than Dynasty, other than the one song. But I don't know. And Peter, I get that he was pretty much gloating a lot about how Kiss struggled through the 80s and their finances and all that stuff with ever since him and Ace had left the band. It was almost like he gloated about it. And, he always considers all the guys that came in after him as their replacements, not, the new members of the band or whatever. It's like, the latest, like he mentioned Eric Singer and Bruce when he met them at the convention. He's like, oh, those were our latest replacements that were in the band at the time, and he was kind of dogging on Eric a little bit, like kind of making him sound like he was this little beneath him type person, like, I don't know.
I think that just from the stuff that I've seen and heard about Peter Criss recently, I just think he has sort of that mentality because he was not just mindset, but went through the 70s and all that stuff. So he automatically, as being an older person, just would see himself as, oh, well, I'm this and I'm that,
right,
compared to this young guy that thinks he can do, whether that's true or not. I mean, I think that's his mentality.
Well, his thing too is the fact that none of these guys got to experience the hardships of Kiss when they were starting, and they just pretty much walked into it, glitz and glamour, so to speak. So I think that's where I think Peter is still in that same mindset, and probably Ace too, that they still have that mindset of remembering where they used to be and where they came from, and they feel like Gene and Paul don't remember that. And
that brings up something else I just thought about. If Paul Stanley is not technically in the band, and that replacement is like a pirate type guy, then that also means that Ace and Peter would have more of a say-so than they would have.
Right. And that's what I was saying. I feel like maybe things would have switched a little bit to where they wouldn't feel like they were being ganged up on by Gene and Paul, to where things might have evened back out, and maybe it would have been a little more of a peaceful type of situation, and maybe.
So that makes me think that maybe Peter Criss would have lasted until they took the makeup off, and Ace too, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, we could have had the original four this whole career. I mean, who knows? I mean,
or once again, another question is, would they have taken the makeup off? Because if it's 3 out of the 4 originals, which it was for a little bit before Ace left the first time, they took the makeup off because of what? They wasn't selling records, and that was their last attempt to do something. We have to do something.
Right. And
because nothing they'd done previous to that was working. So I still think they would have taken the makeup off no matter who was in the band, just based on what we know that did happen. That, if it was the same type of situation, with the albums wasn't selling, the tours wasn't selling, they couldn't even tour for the Elder.
I think more than likely that probably would have been the case. It's I forget where I was going. Go ahead.
Well, it's like I was trying to picture Peter Criss playing on the Elder because, or he could have left anyway, and they could have got Eric at that point, like they really did. It could have just repeated itself with or without the true Paul Stanley.
That kind of reminded me when you mentioned Peter on the Elder. That makes me wonder too. Like that's almost a whole nother subject too. Is like if say Peter and Ace did stick around the whole career, and what what would the stuff have sounded like in the '80s? Like that's another thing too. Like how.
Well, I picture it being basically it's sort of like what their solo stuff was because
Yeah.
that's their identity, and they would have carried that with them in Kiss or outside of Kiss. So it would almost have been like,
Yeah, cause I definitely feel like it wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have approached like the hair metal sort of stuff, and like they did in the '80s. So it's almost hard to imagine like the '70s, but then like some of those styles during. But I feel like that's probably what would have happened. But again, that could probably potentially be a whole other topic for another show.
right.
So then, so I don't know. Say Paul did have to leave around that era. How much longer do you think the band would have lasted, or would it still be going today like it is?
Well, if you read Paul's book, there are so many instances where, for whatever reason, whether it be Gene or whether it be lack of record sales or whatever, he was. It was basically, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it was basically the Paul Stanley solo band.
Yeah,
I'm
it
sure,
was.
sure he felt that way too. And I think that if he would have just said, okay, well, let's just break up. We're done. This will be our last album tour, whatever you want to call it, whether they promoted it that way or not.
Right.
This is it. I'm just going to go do something solo. I mean, I could have, at certain times in the 80s, based on the stuff I've read in his book, I could really have seen him doing that. Of course, at the time, we didn't know that was going on to the detail that we know now. But if he had been replaced, that guy could have been someone like Ace and Peter that just didn't. He could have been on. He could have been an alcoholic, or he could have just not had the work ethic that Paul has.
Yeah.
And it might not have went anywhere. But if we're saying that Paul sort of had, he picked his own replacement, he would have, I think, been very careful based on what he knew up to that point to get someone with the same work ethic. And this is like Paul Jr.
Yeah, that's a very good point though about how Gene was pretty much trailed off in the '80s, and say that happened like it did really happen, but then Paul was not in the band, so maybe the band would have been on a hiatus at least at that point.
I could see that for sure happening.
And it may have been like, say, like a 10-year gap or something that Kiss was down, and then got it going again come the '90s or whatever. It could have been one of those situations.
Like when they took the makeup off for Lick It Up, I think the reason that they kept going forward was because it took off.
Mm-hmm.
The album sold really well from what I remember hearing. Yeah. And I think that's why they just ran with it, and they were going to see how long they could, sustain that. And I think that's why the albums were probably not as frequent as the 70s. It seemed like everybody made 2 albums per year in the 70s, but they were putting out albums pretty regularly. And I don't know. I think that it sort of started to fizzle out a little bit after Asylum or after Crazy Nights. It seemed to sort of just,
Yeah, because I mean, there for a while they were putting out at least 1 album a year, and then I'm thinking, after Crazy Nights, it was probably a couple years at that. It was like maybe a 2-year gap, and then
Crazy Nights was 87, so you had
Hot in the Shade was,
Crashes was 88.
yeah, that was sort of, I don't know.
That's only, they had a couple videos, I think, just to keep people aware of them.
Right.
They released that like you would a greatest hits thing.
But Hot in the Shade was what, 89, 90?
Yeah,
And then Revenge wasn't until what, 91,
92, I think it was.
92. So they started having little bits of gaps, and then obviously after Revenge, it wasn't until what, like it was like 5 years, 6 years, something like that before another album.
Well, Psycho Circus was 98. What was in between there? Was there anything?
Just
Alive 3.
Yeah, Live 3 compilations, things like that, but no studio albums. Well, I guess Carnival, but that was, I guess that was supposed to come out a little sooner. But yeah, I mean, basically the point being that, they went from 2 albums a year to 1 album a year to, having larger gaps in between. And I think maybe, Gene doing the movie thing and losing interest like he really did in real life, but had this taken place during this scenario where Paul wasn't even in the band, maybe the band would have been over instead of just a hiatus, because maybe the reason Gene was doing that was because he was just tired of it and sick of it, and they weren't going anywhere. Maybe the concerts and albums were still not selling well at that point, and maybe that could have been the end of the band at that point. He decided
Paul and Gene didn't really get along as well as people thought maybe at the time.
Yeah.
And so if there's another guy in the band that's playing Paul, of course without makeup, he's his own person, Gene probably to a certain extent felt obligated to Paul and the band, because Paul was working on it and still trying to do what, keep the band afloat. And I think if there was a new guy there, technically new guy, I don't think he would have ever gave it as much effort as he did, which was minimal in the 80s for him for a while. So I think that the band could have possibly just ended right there, because, this guy that replaced Paul Stanley doesn't have the want to, because it's not his band. He didn't form the band.
Right. And again, he didn't know the hardships, coming up that the band faced and went through.
So Gene would have been, I mean, I guess we're saying that Peter and Ace is still there, or could have still been there. But I don't think Gene would have been committed to come back or to, I think he really thought probably in his mind, in real life even, that he was going to be a movie star.
Right. Yeah. I think that's where he would have went. Like, well, the band's over, unfortunately, and I'm just going to focus more on, doing Hollywood. And maybe down the road he would have just started doing a solo thing full time if that didn't work out like it did. But I don't know. I would like to think that Paul, I mean, this could even be true, but Paul probably gave Gene a lot of shit during that time when he wasn't focusing on the band, and Paul felt like he was pretty much on his own when it came to songwriting and all that stuff.
Well, I just wonder if there was ever a time, whether it was said or just thought, that Paul thought about replacing Gene.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was really close on his mind at one point. He may have threatened him for all I know, and that's probably why he decided to come back and start focusing more.
Well, when do you think that he started putting? Do you think he started having a lot more input because his movies weren't doing anything really, or do you think it was based on okay, well, I don't know what I was thinking. That was that I need to concentrate on Kiss because it's more important. And when do you think that was, as far as him having more songs show up on albums, and you can tell by watching footage if he's into it or not.
Well,
when did that happened?
I think that part of it could have been him being smart enough to realize that, but I think a lot of it too was probably Paul, like, giving him hell about that, and making shitty movies, and it's not going anywhere, and he's pretty much on his own when it came to everything. And But it didn't really seem like Gene was fully back and committed until Revenge, in my opinion.
Right.
It's like Crazy Nights. He had a little more input. Hot in the Shade, he kind of did too, but at the same time, those were mostly just a bunch of demos anyway. So I feel like Revenge was when he really was like full blown back into it. Obviously, I mean, with Unholy, and you could tell it was like.
And I think they all were. I mean, I know it was as Eric and Bruce, but I think, considering Eric and Bruce had been with him for a while up to that point,
Yeah.
or at least Bruce was, I think that the whole band, and I seemed like I'd read this, I don't know if it was in one of their books or what, that they had a meeting with management, and they suggested, okay, we need to, and I don't know what it's called if you get like I don't want to say fashion designer, but if you get somebody that says, okay, we're going to do this, this is our look. We need to be more real.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be more like, our true selves, who we truly are. And I think that was the first time that Kiss was truly Kiss, like the original Kiss with makeup, without makeup. I think that was when they were truly Kiss. They looked the way they should have always looked. When they took the makeup off from 83 on, that's how they should have looked the whole time.
Right, and it always kind of baffles me is like why that took so long to figure out, because it seems like coming out of all that, the makeup and the way those costumes looked, that would have been like the obvious go-to, is to still keep that kind of hardened look, and they kind of had that with Lick It Up in a way, like they sort of dressed, kind of street-like or whatever, but it wasn't to that full effect yet. And then obviously it went downhill a lot until Revenge happened.
Yeah,
but.
because that does confuse me, because, okay, you have Dynasty, and they started added all the colors and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get to Unmasked, it's the same thing. Then you go into the Elder, and they're back to basically black except for Paul's headband. It's all more or less black. So they went back to that, even though the album is like totally not what you would think. And then you get to Creatures of the Night, and they're totally back to their, true selves. But then you take the makeup off, and then we're not doing that anymore. We're wearing colors again. It's like,
yeah,
I don't know what happened from 82 to 83. It's like, okay, well, if the makeup's black and white and it's gone, then we're freed up to wear pink and orange and whatever. I mean, I know that it was the 80s and everyone looked like that, so it's almost like you have to look like this because everyone is.
And it may have been the extent of the band, like, trying so hard to pretty much come off as a whole complete different band, too. But there was always that, that Kiss thing is always there. Everybody, obviously in the 80s, there were still people showing up with makeup on their face and, all that stuff. It was always there. Ace and Peter, when they were doing their solo shows, people showing up in Kiss makeup. And, that stuff was always there, as much as they tried to sort of get away from it at the time. But, yeah, it just seemed like it would have been the obvious choice is to go right into that sort of look that they had in Revenge, right out of the makeup.
Something else I was thinking about is, okay, if Paul is replaced in the late 70s, they still have the makeup on, so would he be a different character? Because, they went through the different character period before they decided on what they're currently doing now in real life.
The Bandit.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I think if Paul had any say-so, he would have said, I want this guy to be the Bandit. I truly think that's where it would have went.
Sometimes I wish Paul would wear the Bandit makeup now.
I really wish he would have stuck with that, because I like that better.
It's like, pull that out for one of the cruise shows or something like that. If you're not, I think that would be awesome.
That would be awesome. If he did that. A lot of people would go ballistic over that.
Yeah, and I know how iconic the Star is now and all that stuff too, but why not? Why not switch it up a little bit?
The way I look at it is, and we sort of discussed this about before the Kiss cruise happened, when they were doing the Creatures of the Night thing, we discussed how, is it going to be the Eric Carr, Vinnie Vincent makeup? Is it going to be this or that, whatever? And I still think that they should have done that. I still think that they should have, and I know there's people that's not going to agree with it, and it's a whole, back and forth type thing when it comes to a lot of things on Kiss. But you only have one chance to do anything really. Whether it works or not is irrelevant at this point in their career. So Paul could do the Bandit. They could have done the Fox. Truly the Fox with the makeup and the whole, because they're known for makeup, and that's the thing that kills me. I don't want to get on a total another subject, but it's like, okay, you're going to have Eric wear the Fox costume, pretty much,
Exactly.
but not the makeup. It's
Right.
like, isn't that the whole idea?
Right. That's where I was gonna go. I was like, what? How hard is that, or why is it such a big thing to just go ahead and put that makeup on when you're wearing the costume? For
Because they
Christ's
own
sake?
it. They own it.
Yeah, I don't get it. And just the other day, I saw a picture on Facebook of a fan that was they met Peter, at his meet and greet, and the fan was in full costume, but he was wearing the costume that Eric wears now, where it's basically the Eric Carr suit and the cat makeup, next to Peter Chris, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, I wonder what the hell Peter thinks of that. Like,
I think that, and I don't know this, of course, but I think that Peter is so out of tune with that, he probably don't know the difference. And was that guy? Did that guy have that fur coat on that Eric wore a couple times?
Well, he didn't have the coat, but he definitely had the fur. Like how Eric's costume does. I'm like, oh my god! Like I could just imagine what was probably going through Peter's mind.
If he was aware of it at all, I'm sure he didn't like it.
I'd like to think he definitely knows. It's just, I don't know. It's almost insulting, especially to be standing there next to Peter dressed like that.
Yeah, because I remember my phone's ringing.
Pretty guitar.
Yeah, that's Kat's calling me. She probably forgot we were doing a podcast.
Yeah, Amy always forgets too.
What I was going to say was, I remember reading an article about Ace Frehley was talking about Tommy Thayer. He says, yeah, he's wearing those lightning boots that I used to wear. So he remembered that, and that was from like 73, 74.
And I'm pretty sure his are still different from what Ace wore, though.
Yeah, they're a variation, but
yeah, I think they're a lot different. But backing up a little bit, when we was talking about the whole, Gene not being a part of the band, and this and that. I haven't read Paul's book yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does talk about that, at length in his book, and what his feelings were, and probably even what he said to Gene. And I think that has a lot to do with, up to this current day, that he still kind of has a bit of resentment about that. That's why he doesn't hesitate anymore to shut down Gene in interviews or the press, or he don't have no problem speaking his mind anymore, and he doesn't buy the bullshit, if you will. The way Gene acts, he doesn't buy it. He don't.
Well, the thing that kills me is, okay, since social media and the internet and everything, Gene is very aware of that, and he uses it to his advantage a lot of times.
Right.
But also because of it, he should be aware that he's responsible for what he says.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as this, this act of playing rock star and I'm this and I'm that, like Paul sees right through that. Does he not realize that everyone else sees right through that?
I know. There was a line in Peter's book I just read, and it just kind of summed it up perfectly. He was talking about, his perception of Gene back, at the convention when they met, talking again. He's like, Gene lost, being the kind of sweet, soft guy, and he even lost being the monster. All he was now was kind of a, self-centered, self-confessed mogul type person, that kind of, I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said now, but something along those lines. And it was like that almost kind of perfectly summed up how Gene is, because a lot of people talk about how he's, lost the whole true demon persona and this and that, and I have to agree. There's a lot of me that wishes that he would quit acting the way he acts now and act. Even the Revenge era Gene, act more like that Gene again. Like that was still closer to what it is now.
It seems to me like, just from my perspective, it seems like during the point where they were doing the Family Jewels TV show, it seemed like he was the mogul more there than anything else. Now, I know a lot of those episodes were basically staged for an episode of, like some of that stuff that he was trying to do. But I also think some of it was based on reality to a certain extent of his ideas and stuff, because he had like 100 different things going at once. I think he truly is like that.
Right.
It wasn't just for the show. But it's like now, to me, it just seems like he's more about Kiss now. And if it's Kiss related, he'll do it. If it's not, he won't. And that's what it seems like he's at least, in Kiss world, obviously based on the name of the tour. But he's obviously the same person. So I still think, to me, Gene seems like he'd be a hard person to be around if he, extensively. I think that he's a nice guy. I've heard people say when they've met him at the expo, how that he was more than generous with his time. He was, as far as signing things and really having emotion towards the fans. And I know he has that side. Everyone has that potential. And I think he should be the Dean, to be that guy moguling. There's no reason to do that. And it's working. I mean, it's not doing that. It does.
I totally agree. And that's how he was. So much hard. It's still that offside Gene, have that and blah blah. Like minutes later, he's acting like the Apple typical Gene thing. Like I can't. It's like we get it. In that whole attitude, body show, back chilling the V's and all that stuff. He was always mouse stuff, everything that stuff.
I think it was during the tour on the second. I don't remember where they were at. Happy birthday, and he said he gets turned around the thing.
Yeah.
You sit there, but I agree with that.
Right.
That was a different person was back in the
Exactly.
Happened in that
point, like he really did for the most part, to be, but it's just not almost pops up. So, he's got to make sure to throw in line.
Union and footage from, like, I've noticed shout out that they did.
Yeah.
You see him do a lot of with he did back. I'm very curious to know, and I was seeing him down in a room and watch some of the footage. I know they did. I'm almost sure the reunion tour they did to get his character it needed to be as much as he could. Because if you look at the last video, you know, you can roll his eye, the tights of his eye. You need to do that when on the first time, and he was doing that, you know, in the video. I guess he did or two, and you know, hit that character as close as can. I'm curious what she watched, what he was convinced. Okay, well, I just but I do that, and I know like in these, he used to general high and like do that popping. He hasn't done that since the '70s.
Yeah, you shows now. The face don't even look around the stage as they used to. You know, like back and one of the biggest things has always just been the way he sings. Like, he doesn't sing the same way he did in the '70s. Listen to that Davey Driver. You can hear him doing that, like the way he was a little grab voice, like you hear him doing it. You know, not intentionally playing it. It's like he can still do stuff, and I wish he would.
Well, I was listening to that classic '78 yesterday, and you know, I know that that's not Kiss, but at times it's so close to Kiss, even the vocals to a certain extent, that it's like I just wish that they could record an album that's, you know, that's like that, because that's like, I don't know, like 76, 77 is what it sort of sounds like to me. It's about like that. I know it's called Classic '78.
Yeah.
I just really wish they could do that, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, that I listened to that EP, and it's like, to me, it sounds like if Dressed to Kill and Rock and Roll Over had a kid, that's what it sounds like. Like, and I agree. Like, it just makes you almost sad at the same time. So it's like, I just want one more album to sound like that, or even live, you know. But the same, you know, with the whole thing with Paul's voice and all that too, it's just,
well, you know, it's like I've said before, and a lot of people have said this. I think they need an outside producer.
Yeah.
You know, and it can be Eddie Kramer, it can be Rick Rubin, it can be, you know, even Bob Ezrin to a point. Someone needs to have that outside ear to listen. It's like, this is what your fans need to hear. This is your true voice right here. And because on that album, that Classic '78, they even have the guitar tone right. It sounds exactly, the solos and everything. You would swear Ace Frehley was playing those. You would swear.
Yeah, and some of the tone on there, you would think you're listening to Rock and Roll Over. I mean, it's spot on. I mean, and another thing with producer, but it's like whoever's been mixing and mastering, you know, the last couple albums and the live album and all that stuff, that needs to be changed too, because the mix and master on those are bad. You know, again with the drums, I'm not gonna get into that again, but that's the big part of it. And it's almost like if you listen to Monster, it's almost a little like it's clippy at times. Like like the volume's almost too, like there's almost too much mid in it, and it almost clips a lot. Like kind of like Metallica's Death Magnetic. Like that was the issue with that. It was too loud and clipped a lot. So that's a definite change that needs to be made if they do another album.
My thing is, you know, and I've said this about Rick Rubin before.
Yeah.
If you think about a lot of the albums that Rick Rubin's done, it has a certain, I mean, you can tell what band it is, but like with the last Black Sabbath album that he did, you know, 13, it has that crisp, spacious type feel to it that early Black Sabbath had. And if you listen to some of the Johnny Cash ones he did, it has that same type of thing. The Cult's Electric, the Beastie Boys' License to Ill, you know, Slayer's Rain and Blood, all that stuff has that crisp, spacious sound to it. And if Rick Rubin can get a hold of Kiss and do that with a Kiss album, it would sound like their 70s stuff because it not only would it be updated and modern, but it would go back to the classic sound. You know, it's like I wish I had control to where I could. Okay, we're going to do this because I said so. And that.
Well, you could fund the next album, and then you'll have the say.
Sure, yeah. Right.
Well, you know how with Metallica, when they got back with Rick Rubin, how everybody was like, "That's what they've been needing," and blah 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 for the sound. Well, I feel like that's the answer with Kiss, not Rick Rubin, but it needs to either be Bob Ezrin or Eddie Kramer, because it's kind of that it's that same formula.
Out of those two, I'd say Eddie Kramer, because those albums he did with Kiss is perfect.
It's that same formula to me. The way Metallica and Rick Rubin meshed, and some of the other bands he did, but I feel like with Kiss, that would be the real, like, to get a good quality, as close as we can to a 70s sounding Kiss album would be one of those two guys back. And again, I don't have any hopes that would even happen if they do another album.
The thing that really puzzles me about that is, and I know we're off topic, but as far as, you know, they've said numerous times when they're working on an album or whatever, oh, it's going to be the next Destroyer, it's going to be the next this or that, and it never is.
No.
Okay, so if they're so really wanting to prove that to themselves at least, and for the fans, then they need to go about it the right way, you know. And I know they tried that with Revenge, and they got Bob Ezrin for Revenge, right? And it was like one of their best albums that they've ever done, I think. It's
for me,
not my favorite album, but it's a lot closer to Kiss than stuff they did before that.
Well, for me, like, I don't want another album that's like Destroyer or Revenge. I want it to be more like Rock and Roll Over or Love Gun, or even the first album. You know, even the demos on the first album, the way Eddie Kramer made them sound on that versus the actual album with the other guy that they used. You know, that. Like, I don't care. You know, the whole. It's like comparing LeBron James to Michael Jordan all the time. It's not true. I don't care about it. I don't want it to be like those two albums. I want it to sound more like those, because to me, those are the more, like, the real sound of Kiss. You know, like Dress Kill, Rock and Roll Over, that kind of stuff. And,
well, you know, it's funny because I consider Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun to be like the best Kiss albums, like, of all time. Yeah. But to me, and it's funny, because they're real like real gritty sounding. Mm-hmm. They're real polished sounding at the same time, and that combination is what really works. Yeah. You know, because it's like, I wouldn't have a problem. You know, it's like, okay, here's someone that's not a Kiss fan, that's never heard Kiss. Listen to Rock and Roll Over. You'll love it. You know, if you like rock music at all, you'll love it. And there's nothing about that album there's not one bad track on that album, or right, for that matter.
And Rock and Roll Over is the closest thing to the way they sound live, because guess what? They pretty much recorded that thing live the way it was set up, you know, in that old theater, and it got that sound. So I'm hoping, but, you know, again, it's probably a pipe dream that if they even do another album, that we're going to get anything like that. And
I think my opinion is, if and when they do another album, I think it's going to be just like Monster was.
Yeah, it's going to be the same old formula. Paul's going to produce it, and it's, you know, all that stuff. I hate to, you know, sound like I'm not, like, disappointed about it, but you know what I mean. Like, I would be glad to see a new album at the same time, but at the same time, I don't want it to sound the same way as those last two albums.
You know, it's like one or both of us have said before, they would have to get, well, it's like with the Classic 78 again. These guys are Kiss fans.
Yes.
So they know what appeals to a Kiss fan. And that's what they're doing. That's what that EP was. So you would have to get guys that's younger guys that's been influenced by Kiss, and they like the sound of, say, Rock and Roll Over. That's the true Kiss to them, and it truly is. They would have to make it, because Kiss can't make that album anymore. They just can't. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they can. I hope they do. But I really don't think at this point in their life that they're, singing issues aside, I don't think that they can do it.
Part of me still thinks, that if they do this Kiss 2.0 thing, that those guys that did Class of '78 are going to be the two replacements, and it's just like almost like a test, like
Well,
they put that out in the open, just saying it is what it is, but then those guys could end up being the ones that do take over, and if it were the case,
if
I'm all
that's
for it.
yeah, if that's the way it panned out, I mean, whether we know that's the guys or not, because they're still anonymous, from what I can understand.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get any better than that. I haven't heard anything better than that.
No, I mean, next to the real thing, it's at this point it's almost better than the real thing. I'm sorry to say, but
Oh yeah, it is, because we've said, and a lot of people probably agree with this. I mean, I know if you're in the moment and you're watching a Kiss tribute band, you're singing along, you know the songs, and they got the makeup, and you're not really paying attention. But there's not really any tribute bands that there's some that's better than others. I know always you'll get that. And I think of Mr. Speed. They're probably the best one that I've heard and seen.
right.
But if you put them down on a studio album, I would really like to hear how close they really are, because in a live setting and you're there live and you're not really you're not really treating it the same way you would as listening to an album.
I think they did do. I don't know if they did an album or they did do recordings, as far as I know. So I have to see where those are at.
Yeah.
So I could have swore on like the Kiss My Wax, like that version of Love Gun, I'm pretty sure was Mr. Speed that they used. It wasn't just. I don't know. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but
I mean, I think it's hard to find someone that can sing like Paul.
oh yeah.
So if Paul ever had to get his own replacement, say even back in the 70s, it would be really hard for him to find someone that he could, sort of channel himself through, if you want.
I mean, that's like finding someone that could sound like Ozzy. I mean, it's that.
I was just getting ready to say Ozzy would be another one.
I mean, it's that type of voice that it's hard, if not impossible, almost to duplicate. I mean, it's so unique. But well, I think that kind of brings us to the end of this one, this topic. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we get out?
Well, I was just thinking that, okay, say that in our what if scenario that Kiss continued through the 80s.
Okay.
Until they put the makeup back on. First of all, what character do you think the Paul's replacement would be? Like the Bandit, maybe.
Mm.
So they put the makeup back on and do. I don't know. I guess it'd be a reunion, but if Ace and Peter never left, I don't know what that would be. Because it technically wouldn't be a reunion because Paul wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
So I don't know. That'd be like a whole. I don't even know where it would go. I mean, they put the makeup back on and just tour. It wouldn't be a reunion tour. Just okay, here we are again.
Right. Exactly. Like after that, 10-year or so hiatus, like I mentioned, so to speak, with Gene doing the movie thing.
Right. And then, so would they go ahead and do the farewell tour? Because according to real history, the farewell tour was, at least the last thing I heard about it, was the farewell to the 4 original guys.
Right.
Which was because of a lot of the tension and all the stuff that was going on. So in a perfect world, you'd like to think that, okay, well, maybe that it wouldn't have went on. But then again, it would be the same people, with the exception of the Paul replacement. So maybe it would have fell apart and got back the way it might have repeated itself, because when Ace and Peter got back in the band up to that point, history sort of did repeat itself. Peter left first again, and then Ace left a few years later, and it's sort of like, here we go again type of thing. And I'm sure Paul and Gene probably felt that way. It's like they felt like they're reliving it. And they even said that on the Second Coming DVD. It's like Ace had missed a couple flights, and they really had to have a talk with him to see if his heart was in the right place. Are you committed to this? before we move forward with this reunion tour. So it's almost like it might have just continued to go that way regardless if there was a Paul or Paul's replacement, whatever, the Bandit.
Right, and this time it was like with the contract thing, they were bouncing in and out at that point. It was so. I remember how much of a circus it felt. No pun intended, but the way they were bouncing in and out. Eric Peter.
Yeah.
Like I was saying back on that tour with Aerosmith, I wasn't sure what lineup I was going to see. I didn't know if Ace was still going to be there or not. And
I'm really surprised that Gene and Paul let it get to that point.
yeah,
It almost makes me think that they didn't have the control that they wanted, and I'm sure they didn't approve of it because, I mean, I know that Gene had said that he had wished it had stayed all 4 original members at one time, and I'm sure he has always felt that way, but maybe at that point he probably thought, okay, well, whatever.
yeah.
Any Kiss is better than no Kiss. Sort of our mentality now, I accept everything they do.
Yeah,
Whether I have my opinions about it or not, any Kiss is better than no Kiss.
I agree. I mean, it's definitely going to be a weird and sad time when they are done, for real. But at the same time, when they're still going, it's just certain things that you almost feel like they're in danger of tarnishing some of their legacy with the way some of the things still go and voices and whatnot.
A lot of fans already think that about different, with the merchandise.
Yeah.
People are convinced that they've way oversaturated on merchandise, and I think, I love stuff, but I don't buy any of that.
I
And I've
can't
said,
tell.
yeah, I know, right? But if you look behind me, there's no Kiss back there, I think, of anything.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, it's
But
surprising.
it's to your right.
Yeah, there is support there, but I don't. I just don't buy it because
Because you're not a real fan.
I'm not a real fan. I don't see a point in, and I think there's an audience for everything. I mean, like the Hello Kitty stuff. There's, they sell it. I mean, there's people that was buying it. Like, you could put out anything and people will buy it.
I know.
mean, there's anything you want on eBay. No, actually, keep me off eBay. Yeah, as far as I think, a lot of fans are probably convinced that Kiss is just a money-making machine, and they don't give the music, the credit. And you could go into that thing with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's a whole perfect example of how they were never taken seriously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, I don't know. This could be another topic too, but in a way, I feel like sometimes they don't give the music credit as far as what they play live because they have that whole one-track mind, which is wrong in my opinion. About most people only want to hear this certain stuff. I don't know. It's almost like they just don't give the credit to a lot of their songs. Like they feel like nobody knows a lot of that stuff, and
Right.
a lot of times in concert, Paul, like if it's a song that they don't normally do, like I don't know, Hide Your Heart, or he'll mention the album it comes off of, and it's almost like he's nervous about it, the way he's like introducing the song and hope you like this.
What if on the, I don't know what their next date is, but what if the next date they did, like, say, Burn Bitch Burn?
Well, their next date's at Chicago Open Air Festival, so I would put money on it that it's going to be the peanut butter and jelly set list for that type of thing.
But I mean, as bad as some of them songs are in the 80s, fans would go completely crazy if they played even All Hell's Breaking Loose or something like that.
Read My Body.
Yeah. I mean, God, why not do that? Why not do it?
Maybe on the cruise, but
do the worst of Kiss tour. Just play all the songs the songs that they truly hate. That's the set list. Just do that.
Right. Sounds like the cruise is the only time we're going to get anything close to that. So I don't know.
And they don't really do that on the cruise.
Right. It's still kind of like
It's
they keep that list pretty short
it's
too.
yeah, it's still it's different songs than they do live, or at least a lot of them are, but it's
Hmm.
still like a hand-picked set list, and they don't go outside of that.
Exactly. Well, I think we're gonna end this one here. I gotta take off soon anyway. Um, so let us know in the comments. Give us some of your ideas. What do you think the scenario could have been had Paul lost his voice back then? What would have happened to the band as we know it today?
And something else, I'm curious. You think there'd been a Kiss 2.0, or obviously we haven't seen that yet, but would that even be? I mean, everybody gets older, so I guess that would have to happen eventually.
Right. Maybe it'd be Kiss 3.0 at this point. Had it happened back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah, or 2.0 came and went.
It's like America Online. You get all them different 2.0 and 3.0, 9.0
Right.
year after year.
You have to update your iTunes every so often, or it won't work.
All right. So again, leave us some comments. Let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel. Like us on Facebook. And anything else till we close off. All right. So we'll see you guys next week then.